So thank you for coming to the protest this morning. You said a few words. What did you think? Right.
It was wonderful. I mean, I just can't. I just left Occupy Wall Street, New York, and I was really sad to leave. I have to say, I've been there every day for a week, and it's just an extraordinarily special place, and it was a bit heartbreaking to leave. I don't know the next time I'm going to be back there. And so to arrive in San Francisco and be greeted by this amazing direct action at Wells Fargo and just amazing music. I mean, Occupy San Francisco is has a very San Francisco feel. It's really outrageous, and there's a stronger environmental contingent. And you know, this is going to look different everywhere in the country. But there's an amazing feeling of being part of something bigger than whatever it is that we're doing, you know, in our own specific location. So it was a fantastic welcome to San Francisco.
I'm glad we could, put on an appropriate welcome
Thanks
to you.
Thanks for doing that for me.
So, I guess one of the things that we've heard a lot of, which is a bit frustrating, is that Occupy protesters everywhere don't know what they want.
Yeah.
Now obviously there's quite a lot of problems with that statement. Do you want to sort of say a few?
Yeah, I mean, this is such a powerful moment, and new people are streaming into this movement every day. There's something about the openness of the call. People aren't being asked to join, an organization. They're being asked to come to a space, be part of a moment, and everybody. Like, I mean, talking to the people who were, the very first people in New York to occupy Liberty Plaza. This has gotten so much bigger than they ever imagined. Nobody is, in control of this. So there's something that's really working, and the idea that there's something wrong with the fact that it isn't totally prescribed, I think really misunderstands what it is that is drawing people. I think it is the openness. But that said, I think that as this movement finds itself, and it's still in the process of finding itself, it will develop democratic mechanisms to be able to articulate a vision. I mean, this idea of demands implies that this is some kind of a negotiation, like here are our demands, and if you give us our demands, then we'll all go home. I'm not sure that that's what this is about. I mean, I think that people are really trying to articulate another kind of society. And what inspires people most that I've seen, certainly in New York, and that's the only other occupation that I've been to so far, is are the values that are governing the space itself. The fact that people are providing for basic needs without money, that there's free health care, that there's free food, that there's an openness. To an incredible variety of people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. So I don't know that this is about demands per se. That is a media meme that's been imposed on this movement from the outside. I was part of the so-called anti-globalization movement, which was not an anti-globalization movement. It was an anti-corporate movement and an anti-capitalist movement. That idea that it was just against globalization was imposed by the media, and what they used to always say to us is, what is your alternative? Because our demands were clear. We wanted to shut down the WTO, we wanted to shut down the IMF. So because they couldn't say what are your demands, they tried to delegitimize us by saying what is your alternative. So there's always going to be something like that. It's really clear why people are angry. People are angry at just the outrageous injustice of this society, and I think that the values that this movement stands for are going to be articulated as this movement finds itself, and as a lot of people who are coming to politics for the first time through this movement educate themselves and find out for themselves what they want. This is a very young movement, and there are a lot of people who have never engaged in any kind of political activism before. So it makes sense to me that there would be a process, there would be a journey that people would go on before they know what they want.
It's interesting. I mean, you talk about it as being a very young movement, and I think that a lot of this movement kind of initially the movement started the inception sort of appeared around the Occupy Wall Street sort of #Occupy Wall Street Twitter meme. And so forth. I mean, we discussed a little bit of that earlier. Now it's become a really popular meme that has taken root in I guess the popular mindset, the Occupy meme. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Well, I think part of it, this word occupation is such a complicated word. I've spent a lot of my life opposing occupation, colonial occupations of land, in my country, in Canada, in Palestine. But I also spent a couple years living in Argentina after the economic crisis in 2001 that destroyed that country's economy, and a popular uprising overthrew 4 presidents in 3 weeks. And then there was this movement to occupy plazas, occupy abandoned buildings, occupy land, and the phrase either la toma, like we made a film called The Take, La Toma. It was about the same spirit of taking up space, taking resources that we have a right to, and also occupying space. So I'm used to the other use of that phrase as well, the radical use of that phrase. And I think part of what is appealing to people so much is the connection. People talk about how isolated they felt, alone in their houses, alone at their computer screens, alone watching television. Even just the process of using social media can be very isolating. And it's the physical connection, the physically taking up space that I think is resonating with people, and that I think it's occupy in that sense of the word, of taking up space and being in community together. It's one of those phrases, it's one of those words that have different resonances. So I think that it's important to be really clear about the history of the word occupation, and that we're opposed to a lot of kinds of occupations, but we're trying to build another one. And there is a radical history of that as well, and the reclaiming of that word in Latin America with the land occupations, the MST, and I think this is very much in that tradition.
Thank you. So is there anything you want to say to Occupy? I'll let you sort of get on with your day. I know you're very busy, a lot of other things to do and see. Is there any other words of wisdom you have for Occupy SF before you go?
Well, I'm one of the older people here, and I've been part of movements that have tried to take on corporate power before, and I think about the mistakes that we have made in the past when we tried to figure out, how do you take on an all-pervasive system, which is really, really tricky, right? I mean, this movement has been inspired by the Arab Spring and the students and the young people and protesters in Tahrir Square, but and there is something amazing about that. But also, it's a completely different task to think about. How do you overthrow a dictator? Then how do you change a system that is everywhere and woven into every aspect of our lives? The protesters in Egypt are now struggling with that question because they did get rid of Mubarak, but now they find themselves locked within a system that they're not happy with. The students in Spain calling for real democracy now. Are also still struggling with, they've named what they are against, which is this system of collusion between the banks and their government, between corporations and their government. They don't believe that's democracy. They're trying to embody another kind of democracy in the square, but how do you actually change that system? And that is where we're entering territory that goes beyond our answers. We really don't know. Nobody's actually ever tried to do what we're doing before. Not within a completely globalized, virtualized system. So anybody who claims they know, how to do this, frankly, is lying. So I think what we need to do, more than to articulate demands that we don't know how to fulfill, is develop the mechanisms to really think together and to come up with ways of making democratic decisions together, learning from other transformative movements, whether it's the constituent assembly process in Ecuador and Bolivia, or the process by which 30,000 people in Bolivia wrote the Cochabamba Accord, which was an incredible participatory process. Or ways in which social movements in Iceland after the crash created democratic structures and are now intersecting with the state, and even have run political candidates and have a rotating leadership. I mean, there are so many experiments going on we don't know about, in radical democracy and how you intersect with the system. So I feel like that's one of the things we really need to do, and it has to start with humility. Like, it actually has to start by saying, we don't know how to do this. And people who are using an old Marxist model that is about seizing the means of production, I also don't know how to do this. So we don't know, but we really do want to find out. We don't want to fetishize our lack of knowledge and our lack of structure and say that's the whole point. I don't think that's the point. I think the stakes are too high to make a fetish out of not having a structure, not having an ideology. I think we've made that mistake in the past. I think that was the mistake of the so-called Seattle moment. And I think the stakes are just too high. We lost a decade when that movement fell apart, and corporate power became so much more voracious and destructive in that period. We're dealing with the effects now, and we have to be in this for the long haul, and we have to succeed.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.